Trade Mart for the Mississippi Farm Bureau and AgUP Sale of Champions. That's where we have relocated the Element Well studio. We welcome to the program now Andy Berry, Mississippi State Senator, represents District 35, which includes Copiah, Jefferson Davis, Lawrence, and Simpson counties. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for having me this morning.
So I believe the last time you and I talked, you shared with me in somewhat privately that you intended to run for the state Senate.
I think it was a year ago here today.
I believe so.
I had told you that.
Yeah, and now you are one, as they say.
That's it. And thankfully, at that time, I had already qualified, and nobody else had. So I had a very fortunate and blessed race of no opponents.
Yeah. So you come from an agriculture background, right?
I do. You know, I've worked for the last 10 or so years for the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association, the Mississippi Beef Council. I grew up on a farm. I grew up like many of these children here today, raising and exhibiting animals here at the Dixie National and the State Fair, and on a national scale as well, personally. But I know the work that these children have put in to get here today, and they don't do it by accident. They're here today.
Yeah. So we just interviewed, of course, you may not have caught it, but Leighton Varner, of course, is the daughter of Lance Varner.
Yes, sir.
So, and she did a fantastic job, but we got lots of positive comments back on our text line about just how well she conducted herself during the interview and how impressed they were and how they felt very positive about the future of Mississippi, and in particular for our agriculture industry, and something that obviously you're involved in. But it's important that we continue to pass down that profession. Right?
Absolutely. I can trace back the path that led me to being, heading formally a trade association and then being in the Senate. Started at this youth livestock program. The 4-H program, the FFA program is what got me started. Kind of got me out. I was kind of a shy kid and didn't like to be up front. Didn't like to stand in front of people, but I learned through those programs to do to have those skills, to speak up, to find my voice, to be passionate about something, but also to work, to get up every morning and have a responsibility that there was another living, breathing animal that depended upon me for its existence and its success.
Yeah.
And so, there's a many night at 9 or 10 o'clock after I'd get back when I was in high school. I'd have to come back from football practice, go out there and work with my animals. And it's no different than these kids here. They're up every morning before school, going out and tending these animals, providing the care and the feed that they need, and then working. It's a family affair. It takes all of them, but these kids learn a lot of valuable lessons through this project.
That's absolutely consistent with what Leighton shared as well. That it's a lot of work before and after school. It is a family team collaborative effort, which I think is consistent with what professional farming is all about.
It is. These kids, a lot of them, they don't go on vacations. They have a family trip to an out-of-state livestock show of some description, or they're out searching for animals. But this is what the family does, and it brings them together. And this baseball and sports are great. My kids have participated in both of these projects, both sports and the 4-H program, and it was good for our family, as it is all of these.
Tell us about the cattle industry specifically. I've seen some reports recently that there's some problems nationwide that the industry is facing, and we might be looking at some cost increases of beef in particular as a result.
I read a report earlier this week that the cattle inventory is the lowest it's been in almost 70 years, going back to the 60s. So more than most people has been alive. We have fewer number of cattle. And so, it's just a simple law of supply and demand when there's less of them out there. And what's brought that on, mainly Gerard, is drought. We look back in the Midwest, Texas North has had drought for a couple of years, but then that drought spread, into Georgia this year. Every county in Mississippi experienced at least a D3, and they all got to D4 at some point, which is a major drought. And so we've had a lot of sell-off of our herds across the country. And when you sell those cows, which is the factory of the cattle cycle, it's hard to replace those because they've got to be, probably 2 years old before they're actually able to produce a calf. And then that calf, before it can turn into a product, it's another 18 months. You're looking at almost 4 years if I wanted to keep turn a cow into a factory today.
Yeah.
Before you could get a product out of that. So I expect, for one, it's going to be good for our cattle farmers. We're going to hopefully reap some rewards in that market, and the consumers. So far our demand has kept up with the pricing.
Yeah.
We have a good product.
To your point, I remember speaking this past August when we were right in the throes of obviously the worst part of the drought because we had extremely hot temperatures as well. And over in Smith County, where there are a lot of farmers, obviously, I believe a lot of cattle farmers, if I'm not mistaken, and they were talking about having to put the hay out from their reserves much earlier than normal, and they expressed some concerns about that.
It's been terrible to find winter forage for our cattle. We depend a lot in central and south Mississippi, particularly on winter ryegrass. And so we were late because it didn't rain. You got to have water to grow the grass. And so personally myself, I didn't cut any hay after the middle of June. And so I make the bulk of my hay, and a lot of folks do in late June and into July. Well, that was non-existent. If you didn't have it made by July 1st, you didn't have any moisture to produce any more hay, and the temperatures were so high, it really stressed the forage production. And to the point in South Mississippi, you could name your price, and you probably couldn't buy any extra hay even today.
Yeah. Amazing. So is that situation, will it stabilize, you feel like, this year?
As what we've seen is of course, that we've had a huge sell-off. We had record runs in our cattle markets back in the fall of people, they knew they couldn't take care of them, so they sold them. And so they don't have that inventory there, so they didn't have as many to feed. Yeah. And so that's again, that goes back into our inventory is so low. All those cattle went into hamburger meat that were sold like that. And so it's just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of once that sell-off started until it rained, there was no reason to stop selling.
Well, if the climate change activists had their way, we wouldn't have any cattle.
We wouldn't. We'd be eating processed dog food, ultra-processed dog food.
Unbelievable.
And they keep pushing that, and we see some cell-cultured stuff that's out there. We have worked very hard to kind of prevent that from taking hold in Mississippi, and by and large, consumers don't have the appetite for it.
Right.
I've never tried it. I've talked to some people that have, but it's not something that I'm gonna waste a lot of time cooking or eating.
How's it been serving in the Senate?
It's been very good. We're starting to get started. We've had a lot of committee meetings. There's a lot that goes on, as behind the scenes. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily happen down on the Senate floor this time of year. And so getting the committees going, we're starting to look through those bills and actually do the work that the people sent us up there for. And so been very welcoming. Both sides of the aisle been very welcome to help me get acclimated to the floor up there.
I know something that has garnered a fair amount of discussion, I believe on both sides of the hall there is just the sale of land to Chinese and those who are adversarial to the country. You think we're going to see some legislation to that effect? What do you think about that?
I've heard rumors of several bills floating around with that. I've been looking into that issue for several years, and even with the Cattlemen's Association, we tried several different variances of policy proposals to produce at our national level. We wanted to, like everybody, eliminate it. Yeah. And then we couldn't get that done because there were some legitimate problems with different concerns of ownership, out there. And we said, okay, well, let's pull it back to a reciprocal approach. And if you can't, if we can't do it there, they can't do it here. And that makes the most sense to me. I don't know what we'll ultimately come up to. I attended all the committee meetings this summer that they had dealing with that at the Capitol. And so I have not personally seen any language yet, but I know there's some floating around. And with the deadline next week, I suspect there'll be some bills.
Some states, as you know, have enacted some legislation, some more restrictive than others, but I would think those would probably serve as a guide somewhat in crafting our legislation. I know nearby Arkansas, I think, passed a bill last year.
And it's a tricky subject because there's, whether we like it or not, we live in a global economy.
Sure.
There's all different structures of ownership that we see out there. And so how we tackle that, and then you have to, a point that's been made that I think is a valid point is looking at limiting the ability to sell your land.
Yeah.
And so it's a very complex issue. I think everybody would like to just rubber stamp and say, no, you can't do it, but it gets a little bit more complicated.
Well, and before we go, another point is the Chinese are a big market for American farmers
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
We have to consider that as well.
It all goes into that equation.
Appreciate you coming on.
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Andy Berry has been our guest. Folks, when we come back, it's Emma Cameron, Miss Rodeo America, and Emma Watts, Miss Dixie National Rodeo. We're at the Mississippi Farm Bureau and AgUP Sale of Champions. Stay with us.